Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So welcome to today's work already in progress. So I've done the hay. I'm going ahead getting a load of straw here, and that will take care of that. And then I'm going to have several loads of silage, and we'll go to the tanker work then. So I keep trying to remember to do what I just did there, which is kind of come in from the top and go out the other side, because that way when I'm fully loaded, I'm not pulling uphill, I'm pulling downhill. And so I'm coming in empty, kind of going to the higher part then. So that should work. I was probably right on the border there, the jackknifing way too fast thing. So again, at this point on this server, well, actually on any of the servers, so I guess this server is one of them too, there should be no, whoops, I went too far. This is straw, not silage. I have silage in my head. There we go. That'll get me over 100. We'll be close to probably 120,000, so that'll be good enough. And then we'll get silage. But yeah, real-time sync is running on both the FSN servers, so there shouldn't be any need to be like, well, it's such and such off and so forth. So if you caught the generational server thing when I came back on, it is a little interesting, but maybe there's a set offset on those servers, or they just haven't set up the real-time sync yet, because there was about a 4 or 5 hour difference when I got on there yesterday from what real-time was, and I thought they were setting those to just regular 0 offset, but I could be wrong. So this coming summer, I think I'm at the point, because I'm basically below 700,000 now on hay. So I think this coming summer, in between my planting and harvesting, I'm going to go ahead and grab some hay off this field. I think it's time. We should be okay here for a bit. I'm not going to have enough here to replace everything I'm taking. But the 133,000, that's going to be 2 plus a little bit of loads. I'm likely going to move at least 4 here, so that's going to then mean I'm below the 900,000, but silage can wait a bit from that perspective. I mean, it burns through things as quick as hay, but in the end, I'm basically 300,000 ahead on the silage. So what I'm hoping I'll be able to do is kind of stagger it a little bit more than I did, where obviously when I was running this for a while, because I was just packing things in, you know, and I did in essence 2 fields of silage and 2 fields of hay, I was doing multiple times a year on that, and then in addition trying to do other things. So it was a bit much. So yeah, this is probably from here where I had more of the jackknifing going on, because across the field entirely, like, I can really get moving here, so I just need to be careful as I get here that I'm just moving along kind of slowly, because it's right at that hill, I think, before we hit the path or the road, the gravel road, that we have kind of a little bit of a point where there's a tiny dip, and I think somehow I just lose all of my grip there. But yeah, definitely a bit of stuff to get done with selling the milk. We're going to be in good shape for getting some cash, because I don't know that there's a world in which I couldn't get 30,000 per trailer plus any kind of bonus or whatever. And again, the bonus is pretty low, but it's still over 1,000, probably a couple thousand each time. So, and we've been getting sometimes up to 33, sometimes up to 38,000, so it just depends. It's possible here this time of year prices might be going up. But yeah, I think if I'm not over 100,000 on the silage now with what I just put in there, I will absolutely, obviously, be over here. And I say obviously because 2 full trailers is 120,000, so obviously that means I have at least that much in the barn. But I'm going to go ahead and run the 3rd load for sure, and then when I'm over there dumping that, I'll take a peek at where we're at and determine, is it 4 or is it 5? But just in case, because there was that one time I thought I could get 4, and then I tried the 4th one and I had 20,000 or something still left. So I did run into, and I'm going to probably start seeing it here if I'm not careful, with the new maintenance mod that we have running. When I was trying to mow my grass in generational farming, now that we could get on, and finally was able to do that late last night, so I didn't have much time to play before I just needed to get to bed and not play into the wee hours. Figured it'll be what it'll be. It's kind of a jacked up year anyway. But my tractor kept shutting off toward the end, and I realized, ooh, I've crossed that 50% repair threshold. And I think I'm probably coming up on that here. No, actually I'm not. It's the trailer. And so since it doesn't have an engine, the trailer can be operated a little bit longer without repair. But yeah, when you get something with an engine down, it will keep shutting off, probably, more and more. I think I got up to like 55, 57%. But yeah, it was doing it when I checked it after it had stopped the 2nd time, it was at 53%. So it's not like it was that far, but you start getting beyond that, and it just was not working. Wow, I must have just hit the trigger point. So, need to be careful. I'm pretty far away, so I'm sure it's just the corner that's catching it. But even this kind of work, as you can see, there's just... Whoa, wait a minute. Why did I move and... really? I moved an inch and look what happened. Because I think it was so close to the trigger point, just barely moving, and it stopped unloading. But what I was going to say is, even these little things, they take a long time. When you add it all up, they're increments of 3 to 5 minutes, but you start throwing that all together, and it just adds up. When you got to do 6 or 7 of these, you're suddenly in here for half an hour. So, a little bit crazy with that. It looks like at some point I'm going to have to get this tractor over to the fuel station too and fuel up. Maybe I'll do that once I start moving my milk. But yeah, I was just sitting there like, oh, I'll check the silage. I'm like, no, I said I would do it after 3 loads, and it takes this long to do 3 loads that it starts to feel like it's been a long time, I should check. But it hasn't. It just takes a long time to fill. It takes a while to get over and cross the field and get over to the barn and everything in between. So I'm still in good shape with straw. Got quite a bit, so I don't need to work any straw. I'm just getting really hopeful that shortly auctions will start, and more importantly that maybe the ones I want are going to come up, And the thing that's, I think, really going to become challenging is if, which is very likely, if I get one of them coming up and I buy one, but then there's a big break between that and the second. Because obviously I'd like to have the whole thing so I could just freely lay out the yard. But I don't think that's going to happen. It's not going to be likely. And so based on whatever part it is, like if it's the far one kind of into that set of trees and set inward, like obviously I know that's as far as it can go, but I'm going to have, I think, a harder time if it becomes the front one, because that gives me, you know, kind of a freer rein, but I have this kind of invisible line that I can't cross, and so it becomes a debate of what I can go ahead and place down. But I think if I get the deeper one, given what I said, kind of now that I know I can go through the trees and get to dragons to sell grain and stuff, that I think I was going to line up my silo that way, so that way when it's time to sell product, I can just quickly just keep looping around, and there's very, you know, it's kind of on the path. I'm going to have to see what that looks like when I do that, because obviously I'll have to kind of loop out, but I could just come out this entrance here when I'm just loading it. But so I think if I have the deeper one, I think that will give me the ability to place the silo, and that is probably my most urgent need. Obviously this equipment's been sitting out here for years uncovered, so the rest of that, getting additional buildings and so forth to store equipment, is more aesthetics and just keeping things neat and tidy. Oh, you know what? I didn't look. Well, we're gonna do it. I was too excited about talking about the land. So I'm pretty sure I needed 4. I think I had like 60,000 liters, and this can go up to 347. So even being 240, you know, I might be approaching 300,000 or just crossing that. So I think 4 is going to be pretty safe for taking it. But hopefully I'll remember when I swing back, so that I can go ahead and take a peek at things. So yeah, I'm still, for whatever reason, like I said, you know, and obviously some of it is introducing and really getting into the PGA Tour stuff, but I really enjoy that game. It's just something I can get into when I have short bursts of time. It doesn't require any setup, like in some cases, especially like for the VIP series here in Farming Simulator. Sometimes I've got to look around, think about what I want to do so that the episode's a little bit smoother, and I'm not just fumbling around in real time, which I can edit out a little bit, but it just sometimes I think even makes things feel more disjointed than my stream of consciousness discussion, where there's a bunch of hesitations as I'm trying to figure out what my next words are going to be. But I just feel like I'm struggling still to find a cadence and a time for gameplay stuff. Like, it used to be pretty simple. I'd get the trucking stuff done, and a lot of times for the episodes that are more periodic, where obviously the farming stuff, even though it is every other day, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the Farming Simulator stuff is continuous. Alright, so that gets me there. Still okay on mineral feed, because if I didn't have the dairy work to do, I think I'd worry about the mineral feed, but I do have the dairy work to do. You know what, I'm going to move this, because when I'm moving the slurry, this is how I got in trouble last time. I was trying to meander around there, and I ended up running, basically getting hung up with the trailer. So I'm going to put it like here, And then it's kind of out of the way. Alright, so we've got milk here. There's only one real place to take milk, so it kind of doesn't matter what the price is. We just go and take it. I was like, I'm shifted over more than I should be, but Farming Simulator gives you a bit of tolerance there, and so I think I'll go to the gas station when I'm empty, because then it's just easier to start and stop. You can see it, obviously it's taking a bit of horsepower here with a loaded tanker to get going. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of a hill there and all, but even here where I'm on more flat ground, it takes a bit of time to accelerate. So pulling into the gas, you know, slowing down to turn here, then pulling in the gas station, doing all of that while I have all this added weight. As you can see, we're at 67.2 tons. You know, I think we've got like 40 tons of milk. So, which is kind of crazy when you think about that. So that means like 1,000 liters is, you know, almost a ton. And I'm trying to remember, I read somewhere that like a gallon of milk is 10 pounds, basically. Like, so people, I think it was some goofy thing where it was like using everyday objects in your home for a workout routine. So they were talking about like taking a gallon jug and filling it with water, and then you could use that as weights, and then you'd know, hey, each of these is 10 pounds, you know, and you could fill the gallon halfway and give yourself a 5-pound weight. So instead of going out and buying weights, you could just like save milk jugs and fill them with water at different levels, and then kind of get yourself various weights. And you know, it's a way to do it. But then I have the challenge of, I don't know offhand what the conversion from gallons to liters is, so to know 1,000 liters, how many gallons is that? To then determine, like, yeah, that seems right. That would be, you know, 900 pounds or whatever. Because basically what, in theory, that's saying is I'd need 90 pounds or 90 gallons of milk in 1,000 liters, and not sure if that's correct. That seems really, really low. But always the curiosity here when we're going to see what we'll be getting here for this milk. But I would think I could do pretty well here, because we've got quite a bit of milk that we can go ahead and put in. There you go, 37,000. Not a bad payday for a tank of milk. But it does take some time to make milk, for sure. Because if you think about it, at this point, I think, well, maybe it was the morning, so it's probably not quite 48 hours. It's probably barely 24 hours. And we were at 450,000, so I'm going to slow down and peak. And we're at 455, so I'm making under 10,000 liters of milk a day. So to get 50,000, 500,000 liters to fill this up takes me almost 2 months of real time. Which is a little scary to think about at that point, but what that then turns into is, you know, it's taken me 2 months, and I'm going to get, you know, in 2 months it is almost 6 game years. I don't know, it just seems really slow, but that's clearly the pace I'm seeing, is that it's 5,000 liters. I mean, the barn is full. We've not lost productivity. I guess, you know, maybe if I had younger cows it would go a little faster, but the cows kind of cap themselves at 60 months. I think all equipment does. Maybe not. And cows aren't equipment per se, but I'm just saying things that you can look at. But yeah, the thought of swapping out cows, there's just no appeal in that to me. It's just a lot of work, and it's, I'm making money. I just may not be making it as quickly as I could, but I would say that's less problematic. I could probably have started filling earlier, but it's less problematic than obviously if I was competing with something. But unless I suddenly run into a situation where I'm running low on cash, because that is the nice thing, and it probably realistically, if I think back historically over all the time I've been here in FSN, this has got to be the longest stretch I've gone without moving any funds into the game from outside. And part of the reason, obviously, that is at this point, the way FSN has changed rules and so forth, we're kind of self-contained. We don't have the ability to sell at customs anymore right now. And even when we were able to sell at customs, they at the end when they switched things, they started kind of changing the dollars that you could get so that you weren't getting exorbitant amounts. So I've been selling on server for a while, and that used to be what happened. Is I would take the crops, I'd ship them off through the customs warehouse, and then the sale would take place off the server, and that would mean I, in essence, was getting no profit in game. The most I would have was something like the BGA was doing, but we looked at that several episodes ago, and I make like a couple $100 a day if I'm not selling anything. So, the nice thing is the farm is basically in a perpetual mode of treading water, sustaining itself, whatever description you want to use, where I can operate the farm for eternity, basically, and I would be okay. I just need to keep slurrying the BGA, and I'm kind of paying for everything I need to be doing. But obviously, if I want to do grander things, like buy some land, buy any equipment, I need more profit than that. But the reality is, at this point, given where I'm at in my FSN career, like, what equipment do I need? I mean, I've gotten to the point in Shellbrook where I've bought equipment when we first started playing on FS22. Like, oh, come on. Alright, I think I saved it. Ugh. I'm like, why are you slipping? I'm barely moving. But yeah, like a rock picker that I used because, hey, it's this new dynamic, and I obviously don't want to be damaging my equipment. But then the good thing is, with the dynamic of direct seeding, you're not really turning up rocks anymore, and so it kind of became, hey, I don't need this piece of equipment anymore. And even if I was turning up rocks, I think at some point I realized it was just the cost benefit was not there. Just as with, what is it, mulching, or I don't remember. I don't know. There's something I don't do. Rolling. It's rolling, not mulching. Rolling of the field will increase your yield each time, but it takes so long. And again, it's more equipment, and a decent sized roller takes a giant tractor. Like on this series, it's not a big deal, but for generational farming, for example, it certainly would be. So, I don't really need to buy any equipment, so I'm really at the point like a multi-generational farm, which at this point we certainly would be, because, as I said, we're at year 118 now. I think I started, I think I was in FSN in year 57, but it was as a contractor, so I don't think I moved in to anything until a few years after that. Or no, maybe year 57. I think I may have started in year 53 or 54. and then was operating for 3 or 4 years as a contractor to save up enough money and gain experience and so forth, and how things worked here, and just multiplayer in general, because I had never done it. Seeing what the dynamics were with that. So we're over 60 years on the farm. Like, I suppose if someone started their farm when they were 20, I could be 80 years old, and it could still be the first generation, and I could be doing all this work. But the likelihood is, by now, I would have passed it on to one of my children, and if I'm still around, I would be relaxing, hopefully, watching the sunrise and sunset, and helping where I wanted. Like, if it's like, hey, I like feeding the cows or something. Okay, what is happening? I guess I couldn't have filled it much earlier. I didn't want to get so far that I had to make a really sharp turn through the trees, but it kind of seems to be giving me that anyway. So, yeah, what I'm getting at with that is, this would likely be passed on to one of my children, if not perhaps already to one of their children, to, one of my grandchildren. Because a generation technically, is 20 years, and if I'm over 60 years, we're kind of 3 generations. We're starting our 3rd generation here, and the farm could have changed hands a couple times. And when you do that, and if everything's been well maintained, and the farm hasn't had terrible years where it's gone bankrupt or whatever, I would think 2-3 generations in, you'd be in pretty good shape. Now, the one thing that isn't entirely realistic in how things are happening here and so forth, and once again, if I really didn't do anything else and I played this game only and so forth, perhaps I might push myself for a little more realism and just say, hey, like, a truck's not going to last more than 15 years or something. And so at that point, I'd be like, all right, I need to sell my old tractor and replace it with a new one. And obviously that turnover would cause a little bit more consumption, or a lot more consumption in things, because mechanical equipment, it can't be kept running eternally. Like, my harvester isn't going to work forever. But again, I don't know, like, on that. And even trucks. I mean, in American Truck Simulator and stuff, when I'm a contractor, I routinely see trucks that are coming up or have exceeded 500,000 miles. I was thinking I needed to turn in here. I am, like, losing my mind about what I'm actually doing. Just like I forgot to go ahead and check the silage on the 3rd load. But, and again, if you could get a passenger car to that, like, I think you'd be considered like a mechanical genius of some sort. They're just not made for that, but obviously trucks are. And similarly then, other commercial / agricultural, I mean, I would consider agriculture part of commerce, but I don't know if it's technically considered, if a harvester is considered a commercial vehicle. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm thinking in my head that I'm not sharing with you, that is causing me to, again, create word salad that is just all over the place. But that's the piece. You use a harvester once a year, and even if I'm using it for 5 or 10 hours, like, that's it. Otherwise, it's sitting around. So if I, have it in a place where there's no other damage occurring to it from the environment or so forth, which, once again, the way this is set up here, that wouldn't be the case. I'm just leaving it exposed to the elements because I don't have the land to build my sheds on and so forth. But, if I had a shed and was putting it in there and then just bringing it out once a year for harvest, I don't know, would a harvester last 60 years? The 60 years I've been on, could I, be on the same harvester? And I'm just doing the repair work that I'm doing and so forth. Speaking of, let me go grab gas this time. I just realized as I looked at the tiny little green line that's really getting close to probably blinking in orange soon, that I'm getting dangerously low, or lower than I'd like. I probably could finish delivering everything I'm going to with this without running out of fuel, but I'm trying to again get into better habits here where I'm not doing that, because once again, like on the farm in the past, I'd have, say in Shellbrook, I had put in a 25,000 liter diesel tank, so I needed to go get diesel once in a while, and then other than that, every time I pulled in my yard, I just filled my equipment. So that has, for decades was my farming simulator practice, but I'm not doing that now because I don't have my yard, and I'm just not wanting to place stuff where I ultimately know I wouldn't want it. So anything really in the yard, like the stuff I've got, like I'm okay with the fermenting silo and the hayloft kind of up on the hill near field 25. But I don't want stuff then, I don't want anything else around my fields per se in that regard, where I'm just using the outland around the edge of the field. Well, it is. Ah, shoot. I'm doing that. This'll be okay. I'm doing the thing again. I was putting diesel in the trailer because you can, and this is the problem I had when I'm like, it's telling me stop refueling up there. It's filling, and then I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, wow, does a truck take this long to fill? And no, it doesn't. But luckily I only got 101 liters, and I had this thing happen before, and I can just go put milk in it and it'll be fine. But other than, I've wasted whatever few dollars it was, because obviously $421 to fill the tractor, it's, I'm sure, way more than 100 liters of fuel that I put in there, so. But yeah, I would take a tanker like this, just like what I mistakenly was starting to do, and load it with 25,000 liters of fuel, bring it to my farm, and then I could keep my farm equipment going for a long, long time. But I don't want to place a tank down. And given that the fuel station is this close, it's like, I don't know that I want to put a tank down. I mean, when I did that in Shellbrook, that was because, it was a 5-minute trip to get to the fuel station. As you saw here, it was, I'm sure it's under a minute. I didn't time it specifically, but so I think that'll do it for now. I've certainly, chatted with you long enough about what's on my heart, on what's going on right now, what my thoughts are, and where things stand, and kind of how I'm feeling about everything, mainly related to this. So I've got a little bit more work here. As I said, I'm going to definitely run a tank of slurry over to the BGA just to get that topped off, because that's getting down. I think it's down to like 5,000 liters or something. So I have enough room, and it was 10,000 liters 24 hours ago. So I mean, the good news is that I can load that up. I don't have to worry about it too often, but again, to stay self-sustaining and cover my costs, I'd like to at least keep that running, since I'm not feeding silage into the BGA, which would give me, $15,000 a day, but it would also mean I've got to do a lot more work in the grass and so forth, and right now just choosing to spend my time doing other things. And I guess the last thing in the back of my head is, yeah, there is a little bit of trepidation where I do think there may be some shifts in real life coming in the next few months that might severely curtail my time to do anything with entertainment. And so therefore that will have a significant impact on everything I'm doing here. And so I'd prefer that doesn't happen, but I can't control everything in real life. So we'll worry about that when it comes, but just being open with that is also weighing on my consciousness in the back there, and that's part of what's happening in my world right now. So I'm going to keep going, finish up what I need to here, and I'll probably be jumping over to the generational server at some point as well. So I've got some work there later, but at this point I'm going to let you go, and I will see you next time.